wake-up call. Now don't go back to sleep because we are all in the nuclear hot seat.
Nuclear hot seat. It's the bomb.
Honey, look at those beautiful clouds.
Those aren't clouds, Daddy. Those are chemtrails.
Chemtrails? What are chemtrails?
Chemical trails, Daddy, and they're very bad.
Hi, this is Dane Wigington with another week of GeoEngineering Watch Radio. We don't have Russ Tanner with us today, but we have Richard Sachs, and we'll open up the phone lines about 15 after so that we can have some better dialogue. Lots going on this week. It seems the amount of challenges coming at us increase by the day. On the climate scenario, I put out a weekly GeoEngineering Watch weather update that I try to outline the various points and places where the climate is running off the rails, and it's getting harder and harder to keep track of that because it's spinning further and further out of control. But those that have experienced the quote-unquote polar vortex twice already this year, and then the endless parade of engineered snowstorms, got a reprieve. It was quite an extreme reprieve in places. So we went from single-digit highs in places around the Great Lakes to 50 degrees plus, with thunder showers, tornadoes, wind damage everywhere, a complete flip of the switch for the weather, and that's about to flip the other way again. So we've gone from extreme cold to far above normal temperatures. We're going back to extreme cold. And again, I encourage everyone to look on the internet, look at the bigger picture, Google deviation from normal temperatures for maps to see where it's cold and where it's not. And the regions that are being focused on with geoengineering start to become very, very apparent, that the geoengineers and their media lapdogs are focusing on specific places in the country, high population places where they can create a lot of headlines and beat the drum at the winter fury that geoengineering is creating. But the area that they're able to create this is getting smaller and smaller, and their ability to hold that low-level, very shallow layer of cold is starting to wane rapidly. So this next cool down, which will likely be fairly extreme, won't last long, I don't believe. It may be a week. That's not a long time in the bigger picture, although they'll try to make the most out of the headlines. I think after that, we'll more likely be in protracted warming, no more of the polar vortex cool downs. The Weather Channel is nearing the end of its list of theatrically named storms. So again, we hear from people all over these snowed-in regions that the snow is not right, that it's certainly characteristically different from anything they've known. And here's another test people can try. Filmmaker George Barnes, who's done a lot of good for our cause, shared with me something that he just experienced on his snow but I hope others in snow-bound regions can try. But George was trying to take a snow sample, and he packed some of this snow into a pitcher. It wouldn't melt. And finally, he put that in apparently a very warm spot. He came back, the pitcher was just empty. The snow had apparently sublimated and didn't leave much, if any, moisture in the pitcher. So he tried it again, and then he sealed up the top of this pitcher so that if there was moisture there, it wouldn't gas out as his earlier batch did. The pitcher blew up. Wow. And this is what we would expect with snow that is sublimating and bypassing the liquid state, going directly to a gas with nowhere to escape to. So I've already reached out to a few people that are in regions where there's snow to have them pack hopefully a plastic container so it doesn't make too big a mess. Pack it as tightly as possible with this snow, hopefully a fresher batch. Make sure the lid is sealed, put it somewhere where it won't make a mess if it ruptures. And we'll see how many of those containers rupture from this snow sublimating into a gas. Had one lab test come back on the snow, and we've now found not just aluminum, barium, strontium, lead, but now chloride as well is in the snow. And for a lot of people that might live in an urban area or an industrial area, they might think, well, maybe this is normal because of all the contamination, the salting of the roads, so on and so forth. But I live in the middle of a forested wilderness on top of a mountain. We don't have any of that here. We should have air off the Pacific, but this stuff simply doesn't belong in the snow. So on that note, as the climate engineers get increasingly radical, and they are getting incredibly radical with the degree of spraying and their attempt to try to hide the severity of the planetary meltdown from the public as long as possible while they're making provisions, while they're digging in, while they're putting all their chess pieces in place. Now we see other acts of desperation. For example, what's happening in Kiev. Anybody who's watching this on U.S. mainstream media probably has a very distorted picture of what's happening in Kiev. Kiev is just one more country in the long list of countries the U.S. government has helped to topple. Libya, Syria, Iraq, they're working on Iran, Afghanistan. This is the goal of those in power in the U.S. And anybody who can't see this isn't looking very hard. This is all about resources. It's all about control. And I encourage everybody to look at alternate media. In this case, RT-TV is a good source. Now, RT might have some stories that might be a little more protective of their sponsors, but as a whole, they give some of the most undistorted news out there on some of these events right now. You can Google this online. So I encourage people to look at what's really happening and how Kiev ties into the geoengineering, the climate meltdown. It's all connected. Everything's connected. Because as the walls close in, as the public begins to wake up to the fact that they have been literally assaulted, we are under biological attack right now. There's no question about that. You can't call it anything else. When these kind of materials are being dropped from the sky, and we know the effect, we know of many of the constituents that are being dropped in us already, there's no other term for it. It's a biological attack. It's weather warfare. So as the public wakes up to this, the power structure will get, and appears to be getting, increasingly desperate with trying to start other distractions and start to try to finalize whatever agenda plans they have. Certainly taking control of the Middle East is part of that, and trying to encroach on Russia, on China. We see them putting what appear to be provisions for battle plans in place. So again, all these global events are connected, and I encourage people to, as we've stated in other shows, don't look at a headline, certainly don't take news from mainstream media, but look for alternate sources and stand back far enough to see the forest from the trees. Start to connect the dots yourself. Now, we got a very interesting video. I think it was made on February 12th, and I missed it the first time it was posted on my Facebook page. A couple people posted it, and I can't keep up. I'm working 12 hours a day right now to try to stay ahead of things with this issue. But it's about high bypass turbofan jet engines. I'm reposting that on Facebook again today. I've sent it out to everybody yesterday that I could. I hope everybody posts this, looks at it, considers it, because it cuts the final fog out of the air as to the chemtrail, contrail argument. It looks like this was made from somebody on the inside, but the bottom line is this. On the mechanics, we've known this, but we haven't had a video that was so informative yet as this one. And on a high bypass turbofan jet engine, because of its construction and the amount of non-combusted air that passes through this engine, for all practical purposes, it's incapable of producing a condensation trail. Now, we know from film footage, volumes of film footage, that these sprayed dispersements had nothing to do with condensation. We know that already. But now the mechanics being visible of this jet engine in such concise fashion, there's no argument that there are very few jet engines in the air, short of fighter jets, that truly produce a, quote, condensation trail in any fashion like those that we are told are condensation. I encourage everybody to watch this video, use it for a tool. It's truly the bottom line for what we're seeing in the skies. So we have that new bit of data now. And Richard, one thing I want to kick around today is this, that so many people, not just in this movement, but in many movements, if you will, there's a lot of great people that are truly engaged, and for them my most sincere respect and regard. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people who more or less sit the fence, and every 2 weeks, 3, 4 weeks, they'll jump up and down and rant, and then they're gone again, and back to their normal activities, their normal pursuits of personal pleasure. And that's not going to get the job done for us. It's not going to get it done. We don't have much time to get this issue to light. Richard, you've seen this before too. Yes, you've seen people that are not truly engaged, but only want to feel better about themselves, perhaps better that they're engaged in it. And again, I'm not saying this to those who know they're engaged. People who know they're engaged know who they are, and my highest regard for them. But I'm at the point where I'm not wasting my time anymore with people who I know are not engaged, who I know just simply want to play a part or make themselves feel they're playing a part in this every few weeks or so that they don't feel so guilty, perhaps. But that's not helping get the job done. Richard, you've seen what I'm discussing here. You've seen this sort of scenario before?
Yeah, Dane, I think you described it well, and I don't think it's by accident. I think, a large part of it is explained by the fact that there's a very sophisticated, long-standing psychological campaign that is being intensified every day by those rulers in charge of these issues. And one of their main weapons is not nuclear bombs or things like that, but those are important, but a much stronger weapon is the sophisticated psychology to make everyone feel weak, helpless, and primarily afraid. And when they have underlying fear that they carry around all day, then they get too close to some of these very real issues, and they can't stand it for very long because it just starts making them too upset. And I think that if we could, all of these things tie so much together. People need to feel personally stronger in order to be able to face the reality on some of these things and not just want to hold their eyes, closed or turn up the TV when the house is burning. I think it takes a certain amount of courage to admit, first of all, what's happening, and then you have a chance to do something about it.
Well, so many people won't engage in a battle if they don't feel the victory is guaranteed. And that is a philosophic failure. That's the epitome of philosophic failure, because the only true failure is in not having tried, not having at least taken a stand with all one's will and all one's fortitude. And even in nature, I remember as a boy I saw something that really struck me. It was the migration of the spiny lobster. This sounds totally unrelated, but it's in fact completely related. These lobster migrate great distances in a long chain, and they take turns at the front and they take turns at the back. This was under Jacques Cousteau, he was really a mentor for me when I was young. And so whoever's at the back, it's their job to defend this migrating band of lobster. And I saw there was a film of a huge grouper of big fish that came up to the back of all these lobster, and the lobster in the back turned and faced this fish without any thought for itself in order for the greater good to occur, in order for the rest to make it away. And it truly struck me as how nature has instilled this in its various life forms, that they are there for the good of the whole, not for their own personal good, but for the good of the whole. And that is a point of purpose that the human race seems to have lost. And media, as you said, have been brainwashed and instilled in them that their greater good is in their own personal pursuit of pleasure. And again, I think this is a philosophic failure, that if people changed the lens through which they see the world, and they looked at themselves as an integral part of what's happening, and that they do have a power to affect the whole, to affect the equation, and that the only failure occurs in not having tried with all one's might. And if everybody adopted that philosophy, we would be all but guaranteed victory in this battle. We would. So I hope more people, instead of, again, jumping up and down every few weeks, realize that they need to place their greater good in joining the whole in this battle, in this fight, and not just making it a part-time hobby to engage in this, because that's not going to get it done.
Yeah, I think another thing, Dane, is that well, first of all, I would say that all of us still have those great qualities within us. We've just lost touch with them, and we can reconnect if we want to, and then life becomes a lot more interesting at that point. And the other thing that I would say is that one's self-interest and the benefit of the whole are really not separate. And that somebody who runs away from what's happening and tries to ignore what's around them for the sake of their own good is not really helping their own good at all, and they end up suffering for that.
That's a very good point. That's an absolutely good point.
I don't think there's anybody, just one more little thing. I've really put a lot of attention into this issue, and as far as I can tell, there is no one that I have ever encountered or ever heard of that wasn't 100% self-centered. And the way that I understand that is that the people who are more conscious and evolved understand that their self-interest is the interest of everybody.
More people need to see it that way. And again, there are a lot of activists in this fight that are completely engaged, and my heart absolutely goes out to them, and more and more all the time. So we just need to get those that are still on the bench, off the bench, in the fight and helping. And again, I encourage people to look at the wider picture. The events in Kiev are absolutely part of what's unfolding around us. It's connected to the spraying. Everything's connected. So right now, the sort of thing that happened in Kiev is this. It would be comparable to Castro and Putin and a few other leaders that are adversarial in our country's eyes coming over here, arming the Wall Street protesters, literally arming them, funding them, fomenting violence, and then blaming our government for the riots in the streets. That's about how it is in Kiev right now. So people, there's a lot of people even that are aware of the spraying, some former military people I know, aware of the spraying. They're against it, of course, but somehow they're completely on the wrong side of reality, or the wrong side of the fence when it comes to things like that's happening in Kiev or something. Somehow they take our official government narrative for what's happening there, and I don't really understand that. How they can accept that their government is spraying them like a lab rat, but somehow think that their government's on the right side of things with all these countries that are being toppled around the globe. And I don't. It's sort of a selective reality, if you will, and I don't really understand the ability to filter things in that manner. You know, we really all need to get to the point where we stand back, erase our filters, and start over and look clearly. You know, because this situation again is completely off the rails, and it's every day at this point matters in this particular fight that we're engaged in. So in California, we saw that they did give us a little bit of rain 2 weeks ago, and now there was supposed to be rain during the last 2 weeks. All that, of course, vaporized. Now they show a little bit more coming next week. It's almost like as soon as Brown declared the state of emergency here in California, all of a sudden a little bit of rain shows up, just a little, and then the hope for more, so everybody kind of calmed down. But then they gave a dash, they took the rest away. Now they're showing a little bit more coming. We may or may not get it, but the bottom line is, I think more and more people are realizing the climate system now is being completely engineered, and we're seeing the data's coming in so fast now, Richard. It's hard to keep ahead of it. Just like the video, which I didn't get to you yet in time. I'm sure you'll watch it after the show, but videos like that, data that like what we have coming in now, and the glaring weather whiplash that's going on in our country. Again, from snowstorms and single-digit temps to thunderstorms and tornadoes within a couple of days and then back. People are starting to wake up, but again, we're back to the philosophy. If we're going to prevail in this battle, people need to change their philosophy and adopt one that means, or that gives meaning to being a part of the whole, playing your part in that play to the best of your ability, and knowing that if we all adopt that philosophy, then we all work together, and that would ensure our ability to meet this challenge, period.
One comment about your question of these military and other people who understand that the spraying is negative, but they can't understand about the other activities of the government. I think it's kind of a self-preservation tendency not to want to see how big this picture is, because if you just follow the logical connections and you let yourself understand, for example, that the U.S. is the primary promoter of terrorism now worldwide, and it still has lists of these countries that it makes believe are the origin of terrorism, when it itself is behind all of them. It's just too threatening to their worldview, and they're again held by fear that if they find out all this stuff, they're not going to have any hope, and that's just too threatening. The other thing that I want to mention about the weather that's going on, it's part of, there are so many interconnected agendas, like you've mentioned, and they're very, very intentional. One of which is the war on agriculture, particularly small agriculture and organic agriculture, which are targeted for complete extinction. And one of the issues, besides the quantity of rain and water for irrigation, now with these strange snow stories that you mentioned, we have to start asking, well, it might be raining, but is it made out of water? And to what percent? You know, that we didn't have to worry about that before.
Well, when you pack it into a pitcher, put the lid on, and it blows up, certainly
that's usually not a good sign, right?
Not a good sign. When I was, again, the wilderness behind where I live, I mean, I'm surrounded in wilderness. There's literally a couple thousand square miles behind my house, not miles square, but square miles. It's about, 40 miles by 50 miles. It's trailless wilderness. And I'm out there a lot, and there's no reason for any signs of contamination there, of course. And I've been in the woods my whole life, so I think I shared this on a previous show, but I saw in a stream backwater there where the fine silts deposit, it was blue. There was a layer of blue over the silt after the last snowstorm. Now, obviously that's wrong. So, and other people have reported these sort of tints in the snow. And we can only guess at this point what the entire nucleation mix is. And certainly it's going to vary from place to place, from time to time, from event to event. It's going to vary. So when you see somebody online saying, gee, it wasn't that way here, so that means everybody else is wrong, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, you've already brought up two distinct recipes, because what appears to be snow may in fact sublimate, meaning that it goes from frozen, passes the liquid phase, and goes right to gas. But water doesn't sublimate, it's already a liquid, so they're not using the same recipe in rain as they are in this fake snow. We don't know what it is. And when you said there was a chloride compound found in some, I guess you were saying snow tests or rain tests, chloride of what? There's a lot of different chlorides. Which one are you talking about?
Well, see, again, you can't, you can only identify so much in the lab without specific parameters and types of tests, and that's why lab testing is not that easy. You know, if you don't know what you're looking for, you can only get generalities. But bottom line is, it doesn't belong in the snow, period. And at this point, they're increasingly desperate to try to hide the degree of warming that's occurring. And even the Weather Channel yesterday showed finally that, very briefly, you know, it was almost like they had to cover it to say they covered it, but they showed the GISS maps, global maps of overall global temperatures, where literally probably 5 or 6% there were below normal temperatures. The rest were above average. So even the Weather Channel is starting to show this. And again, I would I believe in the coming weeks and months that certain things will become very apparent as the damage that's been done to the climate and the climate system becomes unhideable. So we'll see how that all unfolds. But in the meantime, again, when you see things happening like what's happening in Kiev, like what's happening in Syria, where nothing will appease the U.S. powers, nothing. Just like in Syria, where they tried to blame the chemical weapons on the Assad government, when no logic would dictate them using those weapons, when they were already winning the war, when they knew that that was exactly the excuse the Western powers wanted to invade. All the data now indicates that was absolutely the rebels in Syria that used those weapons, but nothing matters for our government here when they want to invade, they want to topple, and our media spins it. A lot of our public buys it. It's the same with those events. It's the same with the aerosol spraying, that even now in the snow, as soon as that media caught wind of the snow thing, of course they find some meteorologist to explain this and explain that. Black is white, white is black, day is night. And a lot of the public wants to believe that. We're back to our earlier philosophic conversation. A lot of public wants to believe that none of this is true, so they can climb back in their hole or their safety bubble. But that's not going to last much longer. Not much at all. In fact, it's falling apart by the day right now. And you have about 36 countries around the globe descending into chaos right now. So how long can they keep the stock market pumped up? Probably not much longer. You have something called the BDI, the Baltic Dry Index, which is the indicator for all global shipping from anywhere to anywhere. It's virtually gone off the cliff. That means goods aren't shipping. You can't hide that very long. It's been going on for a long time, and this market pump-up is completely fictitious, artificial, and again, the walls are closing in from every direction. So I would argue this, that while people are trying to focus on so many different things, and I see this, people with the geoengineering issue who know it's real, but then they'll say, okay, I think they look at it this way. They'll spend one day in the week on this issue and one day on that issue and so on and so forth. But if the ship is sinking, people need to prioritize. You have to prioritize. You have to pick what the greatest and most immediate threat is and the greatest priority. And you don't run around like a headless chicken trying to do 50 things that won't matter if you don't take care of the big item. So I would argue people need to absolutely prioritize, focus on the target, the most important target first. And geoengineering is that target. Is there anybody, Richard, can you give the phone call-in number?
Yeah, I can do that. Excuse me. The number to call in, and then we'll try to get to as many as we can, is 718 area code, and then 717-8296. 718-717-8296. And if you hold on till we call on you, we'll get to as many as we have time for. The other thing I want to mention, Dane, is that this week I've had some opportunity to talk to our, I think what they call representatives. It's kind of a funny word based on their actual activities. But the idea was, I thought, that we were supposed to have this selection process that puts the best people in public office. And it seems to be quite different than the real situation. While there are some of those, for sure, in Congress and the Senate and other places and locally, we have a big problem with the fact that most of the people in office are examples of exactly what you've been talking about, and they don't want to deal with this at all, and they just like to keep focused on what they mistakenly see as their real personal interest, which is doing the bidding of the highest paying influence out there and ignoring and keeping the public ignorant of what's really going on. And I find that occasionally really frustrating when I forget the real situation and start trying to talk to these people again. They don't care.
They're going to care. They're going to care pretty quick when they can't find a bite of food on the shelf and the walls are closing in on them, and I think that point is very, very close. So anybody who really wants to have a little more preparation for what's coming should do that now, because there's no arguing it's coming. Our situation right now is comparable to a car going 100 miles an hour, 10 feet from impact into the side of a concrete building. I don't care how hard you put the brakes on, it's going to hit. And not only is the human species not putting the brakes on, we're putting the accelerator on. So it's coming. There's no question about that. And what we can do, again, the single best thing we can accomplish, or single most important thing we can accomplish before this current paradigm implodes, is to try to bring this one issue to light, this single greatest impactful issue on the planet's life support systems, which is climate engineering, period. So if we all pull together in this one direction, we're going to get a lot more done than going a lot of different directions. So I hope, again, that people will assertively step up and figure out what they can do a little research before you try to convey this message, and don't leap at the nearest headline. And again, a lot of people have gotten in the habit of accepting headlines as facts. So have you, Richard, I keep going back to the Kiev situation because that's really a flashpoint right now, absolutely global flashpoint. Have you seen much of that unfolding? Have you had time to look at that at all?
I've been watching it as much as I have time for, and it's like you described. Actually, it's the U.S. under direction of global directors, not U.S. directors, are using that in the play that they're unfolding, and they are not only firing up the people locally willing to cause violence, but they're sending in professionals with heavy equipment, and then they have Obama and the people here talking about them as peaceful protesters, and that the government of Ukraine needs to be very restrained and not do anything against them. And it's completely a scam, and you can watch it unfold. And so far, as I had seen anyway, the Ukrainian government forces have been incredibly restrained when you consider that they're being attacked by a professional, very highly funded and highly armed force that is sent in there to destroy the government.
I saw video footage of U.S. diplomats landing in Ukraine. I've been to Ukraine, by the way. I've been to Kiev.
Yeah.
And I saw the video footage of them landing, unloading literally bags full of money into an armored car with the U.S. diplomats. Now, why in the hell do they need that? And then I saw interviews with Ukrainian, these quote-unquote protesters being bussed in that were literally being paid. They're admitting they were being paid on the record.
Yeah,
and
exactly. It's a good system.
Can you imagine if diplomats from foreign countries came here and did that?
Yeah.
Can you imagine the outrage? So where's the outrage with the American public now? Where is outrage? Is it just completely dumbed down?
The American public's got television for their worldview. Let's try to slip in one of our callers right now, if it's okay.
Yeah.
Caller ending with 822. You're on.
Thank you. Hello, Richard and Dane. This is Alan from Colorado.
Hi, Alan. How are you?
Hey, doing all right. How are you guys?
Good, thanks.
So I'm calling in. You're bringing in. I'm very solution focused, and critical mass is part of the solution to ending geoengineering. And who is the people? My question is, who are the people that actually do care, or would care? And I find that the people that are involved with non-GMO and organic food on Facebook, there's 297,000 likes for the Project GMO Non-Verified. If we, my vision is handing out pamphlets, and I'm a shy person, so I myself would actually just attach this pamphlet on the car windows in places like Whole Foods, grocery stores. These are our target audience. I think that we can impact. Even handing out the flyers in front of natural grocery stores and so forth, and then we can create a page that directly relates to or organic food, how it's being contaminated by all the aerosol spraying. There really isn't anything like organic food anymore unless it's in a vacuum, and so forth. What's your thoughts on really targeting that audience?
your point is valid, and I've met with Jeffrey Smith twice. I met with his staff. They're good people. They know geoengineering is going on. I really hope that they start to help us with this cause, because again, with simple logic, I'm not saying the GMO issue is not important. It's very important. But back to my analogy of the ship. If the water's coming over the deck of the ship, and it is right now, then anything else we do is arranging deck chairs on the surface. We have to plug the bottom. And even the GMO issue, no matter what we stop for genetically engineering, the whole planet, every life form is being genetically engineered right now by the absorption of these particles, which can damage endocrine disruption, DNA damage. Everything is susceptible now. How can we not?
I want to just put in one more point there, Alan. I think the really practical, positive side of your point is that these people who do care about their health and are totally into the organic food issue, which includes myself as a health researcher for a really long time, those people care so much about their issue. If they understood that the aerosol spraying issue is a central part of their issue already, and so they need to include it in what they're already doing, I think that might bring in a wave of new supporters. It could be really worthwhile.
It's certainly worthwhile. I mean, go ahead, Alan.
That's exactly my point. I mean, you're genius, Dane. If you could come up with a simple page on how geoengineering is related to organic food, and we can hand these out, I mean, I think we could reach a lot of people really quickly that don't know about geoengineering.
You give me too much credit. I don't, I'm doing my best, but ideas like what you just put forward are important. And sometimes I've been in the trench so long that sometimes I forget to do certain things or don't think of certain things, like what you just suggested. I've met with the leaders of this movement, but actually pinning something, as you just suggested, to circulate, to try to make them realize what we just went over would be really important. Richard, and maybe between us or some we can help to bring to this cause, or even Alan, if you want to help with something like that, we welcome your help as well. And you can reach me through Facebook or the Geoengineering Watch site. But you have a very good suggestion there. So, Richard, let's keep that in front of us and try to pin something short, to the point. And in fact, in a general overall information sheet, which, activist suggestion sheet, which we just put out, maybe making something an addition to that, a single sheet that covers what Alan just suggested. It's a great suggestion, Alan.
Yeah, I think it also, Dane, it also applies to so many other things that appear to be separate issues. And as long as we say, look, you got to decide between that issue and our issue, if we take a little bit different approach and say, look, you're already into our issue, you just don't realize it, and here is how. And in order to really succeed at your issue, you have to join us in this way. I think we could make a huge increase in the number of people who care.
Absolutely. And I mean, you have almost 300,000 people on Facebook involved with non-GMO verified. I mean, that's
right.
A huge target
audience. And that's the GMO. There's also a bunch of them that are totally into the organic movement, and many of those trying to eat nothing but organic food, which includes me. And if you let them know that the quality of the organic food that is their issue, they can keep that issue and fight geoengineering as part of their own issue. And they can do it right now.
Exactly.
And we can document actually the forest here in the Pacific Northwest, Northern California, where I live. We're seeing mutated plants. The plants that do come up are mutated. A lot of plants don't even come up anymore. If we went back 10 years here, there's a lot of edible plants on the forest floor that we don't even see anymore. We can't find them. So if they really understood that, and we photographed even some of these mutated plants we're seeing, it might hit home with them. I mean, plants that are extremely hardy, like manzanita. It's a bush that chemicals almost can't kill. Not that I've ever used them, but I know people who do, and they're dying everywhere right now. And their mutated little leaves come out. I've seen whole big bushes that used to be packed with flowers in spring. Of course, they're blooming out now, and in January because it's hot here, and a whole small tree of manzanita, they grow 12, 14 feet high sometimes, maybe a few flowers on the whole tree. The animals have nothing to eat. I don't see turkeys anymore here. Haven't seen bears, deer. The forest is almost silent completely. So if these GMO people understood that, and again, it's not just the fact that it's mutating everything, affecting everything, but it's killing everything as well. So your point is very valid. We definitely need to incorporate that in to try to bring a lot of those good folks over to our cause. Now, again, in every movement, I know there's people who are very comfortable with their particular focus, and they don't really want to look at the fact that the water's coming over the deck of the ship. It's just too uncomfortable. So, there's some that no matter what you show them, it won't affect them. But there are a great many there that I believe it would affect. So, it's a point well taken, Alan. We'll definitely try to incorporate that in. And you can, again, reach me through geoengineeringwatch.org, and I'll have your email then, and happy to have you work with us in this regard.
Absolutely, Dane. You got it.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for the call, Alan. Let's take a caller with number 7013 at the end. Give us your name and welcome to the show.
Hi, it's James here in Ontario. I've exchanged a few emails with Dane over the past few months, most recently on the subject of nocturnal cloud luminosity. Dane might know, and thanks for all you do.
I remember, I think we discussed this, that also the methane situation may be a factor.
It could be. I'm just going to briefly tell you what I've seen, and then maybe you can comment on it, and I'll listen. I first became aware of what I'll call light phenomena this month on the night of Sunday, February the 2nd, and it lasted until dawn of Sunday, February the 3rd. The moon was in the new moon phase with a luminosity of about 12%, and yet it was like the brightest full moon night possible. And I knew something was wrong there, so I immediately checked the aurora borealis to see if that could have been the source, but I ruled that out because not only was it at a low, but it wasn't visible at my latitude on that night. And since then, I've seen several nights, probably about, 8 or 9 nights, where it was the same effect, and I've been making observations every night since then and recording the data. My conclusion at this point is that the luminosity is coming from some type of refracted light due to cloud cover, because it's only there when there's clouds. However, there's no apparent source. And on a clear, starry night, when there is no cloud cover, it's dark, as it should be. So that's all I wanted to say, and, I don't want to sidetrack your conversation into this phenomena, but I think there could be something there. So, again,
it's important, though. I was curious when, I got the emails from you. I was curious about that, and I sometimes have so much coming at me that I'll get sidetracked in different directions, but I think your observations are important, and if you had any way of putting together a time lapse or something like that, it might be more powerful yet. But with the things that are happening in the atmosphere, Project Lucy, that's the acronym for the use of the ionosphere heaters to try to, for lack of a better term, nuke the atmosphere to degrade the methane. And God knows what they're doing at this point that we can't really have a handle on. And so, this could be connected to that as well. And the CH4 methane, we know, is flooding the atmosphere absolutely right now. Anybody who wants to look at this issue should Google Arctic News. Now, even though there are AMIC scientists that post on Arctic News that, for whatever reason, still seem to advocate for climate engineering, which is obviously a giant leap into the wrong direction. We already know the results of climate engineering, but nevertheless, the other data pointed there, the satellite imagery of the methane, is all correct. So if you look at Arctic News and see how bad the methane situation is, and then these noctilucent clouds that you're seeing, and Project Lucy...
Yeah, they're not actually noctilucent clouds. That's what I first thought, but turns out they're only in the summer, early summer, late spring till late summer, so...
But that's based on past conditions. I think right now...
Well, that's true, isn't it?
Nothing is historically...
Cast in stone.
No, all bets are off at this point. All bets are off. So it's hard to tell exactly what we face, what we have, but I would be very interested in continuing to communicate on that.
Well, I'm going to keep making my observations, recording everything, and I have a little experiment that I do. I've got a crossword puzzle book which has all the font points in it, and so I just take that outside, and I'm telling you, at 3:30 in the morning I could read that thing just plain as day, and that's just not right.
Where are you located at?
I'm in north of Toronto, about 1 hour's drive, so it's about 130 kilometers. I'm close to Georgian Bay. We're right in the middle of this vortex. And by the way, I heard you say there were 2 polar vortexes. Well, I haven't been watching it that closely, but it seems to me we're getting one about every 7 to 10 days.
Well, that's 2 that they named that way. I mean, there's fronts spinning down all the time, but they officially, quote unquote, named or identified as 2. And again, that's just whatever label they choose to put on. It's just like the
okay, I gotcha.
Yeah, it's not doesn't indicate necessarily what happened, because there's been an endless train of them. It is about.
Well, that's it. That's what I'm seeing too. Yeah. And I just want to make a point, because I did post this on your website. But Peter Mansbridge is the head CBC News desk, and when we had the first polar vortex, I think it was back around the 1st of December or sometime, he was joking about the fact that they just made this word up 3 days ago because he'd never heard of it before.
Yeah, I think that's true. It's just like a whole long list of other things on Weather Channel: the heavy, wet snow, snow flashing out to or rain flashing out to snow. Snow doesn't have anything to do with elevation anymore. People should take note of this.
Absolutely.
You notice that they don't talk about snow down to such and such elevation. You're either on the snowy side of the storm or the severe weather side of the storm, of the quote-unquote winter storm.
Okay, I'll drop this now, because we should give some time to other people that want to call in. But I wanted to make this call because I thought, if I get it out there, then there's probably going to be some other people that are going to start looking out at 3 o'clock in the morning, to see what's going on. And Dane, I so appreciate so much what you're doing here. I can't even tell you how much. And I'm fully active. I'm 24/7 on this. I mean, there's nothing more important than this, and we're doing flyers up here and all of it. So,
my highest regard, and thanks for the question, your observations, and please keep in touch email-wise so that we can keep that issue in front of us.
I will do. All the best to you. All the best to you, my friend. Thanks very much.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Richard, those observations were definitely of interest, and actually even here at my latitude, which is much further south, I've seen a little bit of what was mentioned, and I saw it only on nights with a certain cloud cover that there seemed to be illumination going on that we couldn't really identify any source of. Richard, you still
there? Yeah. So I want to make a comment on that. I'll give the number once more in case people need it. It's 718-717-8296. And what I wanted to say about that is that, we have ideas about part of what contaminants are in the atmosphere now, but like you had mentioned before, we don't know the whole picture. It's hard to test for things you don't even know you're looking for. And we know that there's a metallic sheen all around the globe now that affects how light gets refracted, but we don't know what else. And like you said, the methane can affect how the light travels. It's a completely, really bizarre and strange environment that we're dealing with now, and we don't know completely what's in it.
We're in uncharted territory, period. So all former perceptions of what's normal is off. And again, as we've already discussed, when you have current cloud books that have about 3 times more named clouds than historical cloud books, because they're naming aerosol clouds as if they're something natural, we're in truly an altered reality at this point. So on that note, I just got an email back on a comment from somebody in the military about this video I mentioned that discusses the fact that the vast majority of jet engines that are flying around today are high bypass turbofan, and they almost literally can't produce a, quote, condensation trail. So a response back to this military person trying to weakly refute this, and that's what we'd expect from somebody in the military. So now I got also communication back from an engineer that works at Rolls-Royce jet engines that says that data is spot on. It's correct. And we believe it to be correct, and film footage shows it to be correct. This is not condensation. When we see these things turning on and off above us, it's absolutely not condensation. When we have unsprayed skies one day and a grid pattern the next, absolutely has nothing to do with the jet engine. So don't be confused when someone refutes information that claims to be an expert. Just like the post that we put up, for anybody who saw my Facebook post yesterday, it's posted on GeoEngineering Watch, that an article done by some very concerned folks mentioning that the, quote, PhDs are, I think the title of the article is "The PhDs Are Ruining the World." We talked about this a lot in the show, but the bottom line is there's a lot of quote-unquote experts, and I'm not faulting higher education at all, but the doctrination that comes with it. So when someone refutes, for example, this video that makes clear that what we are seeing has nothing to do with condensation, very, very informative video on what a high bypass turbofan jet engine is, just because somebody stumbles down the road and says it isn't so, and they claim to be an expert, don't bite on the first bait that's dangled in front of you like that. Use all the dots that you know of, the film footage that you've already seen. We know these things are turning on and off, has nothing to do with the jet engine. We know this stuff's falling on us. So don't be so easily shaken from a position that you know is solid. That's all. And this, I believe this video to be right on target. This video on the high bypass turbofan engine, it should be a good tool for everybody to silence those who try to claim these are condensation trails. They are not. So I hope everybody helps to circulate this video. And Richard, I think you'll find it of great value once I get it to you when we're off the show here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that, and I completely agree with you that one of the brainwashing techniques that's been used on us for a long time is that if people have a certain credential, then they must be telling the truth. And to put it mildly, that's not the case. And in fact, many of those are sincere good people, but not very discerning, and they don't have any idea who they're actually working for. And they are parroting information that they have been trained over many years comes from irrefutable sources, and those sources are completely corrupt. And I know that from inside experience.
You know about. You're right. You're exactly right. What's some examples of that? How long did it take to get the data out about Agent Orange? How long? How long did it take to get the data out about depleted uranium being used in our own ammunition, probably the root cause of Gulf War syndrome, of which none of the quote-unquote experts seem to be able to figure it out? The glaring elephant in the room, yes, when you use radioactive ammunition, you have our soldiers marching around and the dust from that, problems are going to happen. How about the Gulf of Mexico oil spill? That here you have Barack Obama claiming to be splashing around in the Gulf when media later disclosed that he was in some sealed-off pool that never even touched the Gulf. Contamination is horrific down there, and the quote-unquote experts say it's safe? Really? How about our air quality? When you have all these air monitoring agencies like EPA or like CARB, California Air Resources Board in California, telling us our air is cleaner. Really? When they're testing for their air testing equipment is like it's the equivalent of looking for a boulder when there's tiny little grains of sand falling on us. You can't. If the equipment is designed to sift out the boulder, the sand goes right through. They're looking for PM 2.5 microns at best.
Right, and the equipment is only one of the issues. By far, at least as big of an issue is the fact that many of these officials are willing to say anything for money.
Absolutely.
And an example of that is that the EPA has also told us officially that any amount of the Bt toxin that we eat personally or give to our kids in GMO foods is completely safe and doesn't need any kind of further testing or restriction.
The examples go on and on. Radiation, safe, quote-unquote safe level of radiation. First of all, there's no safe level of radiation. All radiation is bad for you. But we saw after Fukushima some of the quote-unquote safe levels of radiation were up to 10,000%. So they simply change reality to meet their agenda, period. And they put an quote-unquote expert stamp on it, and people buy it, and that's been the case. But now we're at the point where the chickens have come home to roost, that people's willingness to buy the lies, to go along with the lies, and I have to cite 9/11 again as the most glaring example of something that people should be able to see through. Buildings, steel structure high-rises don't just collapse. They don't collapse for no reason. And when you have Anybody who hasn't seen Building 7 come down should watch. Google it. The footage is out there. A 50-story steel structure high-rise collapsed at free fall speed because a few chairs and tables were burning in the first story. How could anybody buy that?
And if you want to know the degree to which this kind of thing is coordinated, which is the reason we're supposed to think that there's no such thing as conspiracies, British television announced the collapse of that building before it happened by mistake.
20 minutes before. And that was so inexplicable that the whole 9/11 Commission report, not a single sentence on Building 7, not a single sentence. And somehow, to this day, so many people are absolutely conditioned into being completely blind to that issue. Completely blind. Here you have Bush and Cheney that would not testify under oath. The only way they testified is they had to be together. No notes could be taken. No film. It's ludicrous. The things that go on in our reality, in our government, are absolutely ludicrous. And back to the spraying. How much more obvious could it be that we are being sprayed like rats? And yet so many people want to trudge along and pretend it's just not there. Whistling through the graveyard, if you will. And so we're at the point where, again, there's no hiding from this any longer. I'm pleading with people to get up off the bench. Those that haven't already, not those that are fully engaged, know who they are. And again, my most sincere respect and regard for them. But those who haven't, I'm asking you, get engaged, change your philosophy, decide that the only failure is in not having tried. Help us with this cause, constructive help, like that we just got from the caller that called in. So we need everybody in this fight, absolutely everybody. And arming yourself with flyers. So many people that get engaged get discouraged because they don't really arm themselves correctly. They run out and try to rant to anybody around them. They get shut down, they get discouraged, and they bail out of the fight. So right. Those that have had that happen, I ask them to stand up again and go about it in a different manner. And for those that haven't engaged, do it right the first time, and you won't get so discouraged. Get credible flyers. You can download them off GeoEngineeringWatch.org, the top flyer on our home page. Download them for free. Print them locally. Use tools that work. The look-up videos.
The other thing, Dane, I want to say with that is that people working within the system, whether it's a fairly, mundane position or anything up into the people flying the chemtrails planes or anything that is doing activities that are destructive to humanity, you don't have to quit your job and starve your family. Just get the information out to the public carefully and quietly about what it is that's going on inside where you're working, so that transparency happens in spite of the politicians whose job it is to make sure it doesn't.
Well, I agree. There's a lot coming at all of us right now, but this is the time we most need to retain our focus, polish our philosophy, remember why we're in the fight, and that, again, the only failure is in not having tried with all one's ability. And so pulling together at this critical time is going to determine the flavor of what we face. And people are, in fact, we are rising in awareness very, very quickly right now, hearing from a lot of places that are non-choir, people that are joining this cause, understanding the gravity of it. And as the climate system disintegrates, we will have many more people waking up. So everybody can help those that are waking up around them by giving them the same instruction. Explain to them how to best go about introducing this issue and bringing it to light. And again, I argue this: if we could reach critical mass where the mainstream media cannot ignore this any longer, where the public at large knows, the dominoes will begin to fall. The power structure will certainly become more dangerous at that point. They're becoming more dangerous by the day because they know they're being exposed. They know the walls are closing in.
Got about a minute, Dane.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I see it. I'm watching the clock here, too. So anyway, my appeal to everybody to please effectively join us in this fight. We need everybody in it.
Yeah, we'll see you back here next week at 12 o'clock Pacific and 3 p.m. Eastern Time on GeoEngineering Watch TV.